everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, tytnation. We've got a big Friday show for you guys today. A lot of news, a lot of things that I want to talk about. A lot of stuff on the agenda. You may have noticed that it's we've got a lot of stories to cover, a lot of news to get through before we go out for the weekend. So that's what I'm going to do here. First, before I get into it, I want to thank all the patrons, patreon.com/tytnation, for supporting us. Got a couple of patron shout-outs here to give you. We have Diego Rosario, Amy Villela, you've got Michael Grabowski, Erica Antillion, I think I've already said your name, Discophage, Brian Newton, Bob Magruder, Vaughn Jenkins, and let's see, let me get another one here. Find some people that I haven't said in the last couple of shows. Let's see. A lot of patrons, a lot of support, so thank you very, very much for that. Joseph Teray. So thank you to all those patrons, and thank you to the rest for supporting independent progressive media. We could not do this show. Literally couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much. All right. So there's that. All right. Let's do some other things as well, like how to get in touch with the show and leave your comment. You can do that using the hashtag tytnation on Twitter. You can also use the YouTube Super Chat in order to send us messages to the show. And I will read them out on air. Plus, you also get the benefit of being able to help out with the show, like if you're not a Patreon or a patron or anything like that, or if you're not on Patreon, you can help out the show that way. So that's super awesome. All right. Anyway, stories for today. We got Gary Cohn speaking out against Donald Trump. We got Bernie Sanders. We got a poll on him. We got more advocacy groups fleeing the Trump administration. We got Montana wildfires. We've got the news fluffer. We've got just all sorts of stuff. The crying Nazi. So much. We got Energy Transfer Partners. No Dapple story. So, again, a lot of news today. So let's get into it. Let's start out with Gary Cohn. Okay. And here we go. Now, Gary Cohn is Donald Trump's economic advisor. This guy is your typical Wall Street establishment Democrat. Now, a lot of people were surprised that Gary Cohn would even join the Trump administration since he was a registered Democrat and had given to Democratic causes. So, again, a lot of pressure on that. So it's not any surprise that after Charlottesville, Cohn started to feel a little uneasy about his role at the White House. I mean, it's one thing to push for tax cuts and deregulation for the financial industry, which, of course, he's in favor of. It's quite another thing to stand by a president that seems to stand by white supremacists, okay, after Charlottesville. In fact, Cohn recently spoke to the Financial Times, saying that he felt enormous pressure to resign after Trump's response to Charlottesville. Now, specifically when Trump, of course, decided to blame both sides for that violence. Now, again, that violence was, it led to one person losing their life, Heather Heyer, as well as 19 people getting injured by white supremacists. So, and of course, Trump afterwards is like, no, both sides. In fact, the alt left are super, super violent. I mean, those people, but the people walking with the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists, the KKK, well, some people were very fine people. And of course, he amended that statement several times, like, oh, I actually went and denounced the KKK, after 2 days. That's the easiest thing that you can do, is denounce neo-Nazi and hate groups. But it took you forever to do that. Oh, no, I had to find the facts. You don't understand, Jeff. We had to find the facts about this. You got to go for a fact-finding mission to find out that the KKK and white supremacists are bad people? Yeah, okay, man. Not buying it. Anyway, now in this interview with the Financial Times, Cohn said that this administration and can and must do better in consistently and unequivocally condemning these groups and do everything we can to heal the deep divisions that exist in our communities. Now, that's a fairly strong statement. Okay, there's no equivocating there. No, we got to condemn these groups. There it is. Now, he also said, I personally have come under enormous pressure, both to resign and to remain in my my current position. He said, as a patriotic American, I am reluctant to leave my post. Really? As using the patriotism? Oh, man. Boy, I got this. I'm the economic advisor to Donald Trump, which means I can push tax cuts and deregulation on Wall Street. But I'm such a patriotic American that I can't leave that post. Okay, cut the bullshit on that one. But nonetheless, he says, I also feel compelled to voice my distress over the events of the last 2 weeks. Citizens standing up for equality and freedom can never be equated with white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and the KKK. So like I said, very strong statement on that, at least. So, and there's a point to that. There's a reason. Okay, Cohn is a Jewish Democrat. Of course he's going to be upset, okay? There were literal neo-Nazis out there chanting, Jew will not replace us, okay? So, but like my question is, why, after this entire thing happened, why did he not resign? Why were there not mass resignations here? There should have been. As soon as he equivocated, everybody should have been like, that's it, pull the chute, I'm gone, right? Now on that, he says, quote, as a Jewish American, I will now allow neo-Nazis ranting Jews will not replace us to cause this Jew to leave his job. Oh, so he's standing up against white supremacists by staying next to a president that seems to be okay with white supremacists, or offers some very weak sauce, milquetoast condemnation to white supremacists. Look, maybe he actually convinced himself that he's taking a stand. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure not everybody's going to see it that way. I certainly do not. Now, the thing is that, look, you're not going to change the president's mind on this. If you think you're taking a stand, or if you've convinced yourself, you're not going to change his mind. Look, Jared Kushner is also Jewish. Ivanka, your daughter, has also switched over to being a Jew, okay? So even with those influences in the White House, he hired somebody like Steve Bannon. He hired somebody like Steve Bannon, yes, but also he did this equivocation, right? And he called people marching with neo-Nazis, the KKK, and white supremacists very, very fine people. So you're not going to change anybody's mind. He seems to be already set in his ways. And that involves defending white supremacists. Now, that got me thinking, could there be a different angle at play? Maybe Gary Cohn is trying to get fired. That's interesting, right? Hear me out on this one, okay? Look, Axios reported that a source close to Trump predicted that Trump will explode when he reads the Cohn interview. He said it's got all the ingredients to enrage the president, a subordinate criticizing him, and an effective endorsement of how the mainstream media portrayed the events. Consider the amount of time Trump spent on stage in Phoenix Tuesday telling the crowd that his response to Charlottesville was perfect, but the fake news intentionally distorted it. They concluded that the way Trump will see it is that Cohn is siding with the fake news. Now, if we know anything about Trump, is the best way to get fired is to challenge him, is to go to the fake media, according to him, and to start talking shit. Okay? Look at Steve Bannon. Okay? He didn't really talk all that much shit about Trump, but he went to the American Prospect, which is a progressive magazine, and started openly challenging Trump on different policies and basically making it look like he's in charge. Okay? So, and look what happened to Bannon. He's gone. He's gone. He's back at Breitbart, right? Now you have Gary Cohn going and talking to the Financial Times and openly criticizing Donald Trump's response on Charlottesville, taking sides with the fake news media. If you want to get fired, that seems to be an effective way in doing it. I would be very, very surprised that once Trump reads about this, if Cohn is there and he lasts through next week, okay? I could be wrong. I could be wrong on that. This might not get him fired at all, or he might not have wanted to get fired in the first place. Who knows, right? But that's my whole read of the situation. Again, I could be wrong. Let me know if you guys agree or not in the comment section below. Okay. So there's Gary Cohn. Let's go to Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie Sanders is still the most popular politician in America, and he towers above all other politicians that were polled in a recent Harvard-Harris poll that was released to the Hill. Now, the whole poll is still not released, but there have been certain sections that have been released exclusively to the Hill, so I'm going to read those. Now, while they released no numbers on this, Senator Sanders remains the most popular politician in the country and is right now the only national figure in the poll that a majority of Americans view favorably. Now, that's very interesting because this comes after a lot of these different continued smear attacks by centrist Democrats painting Sanders and his supporters as members of the so-called alt-left. Now, we know alt-left doesn't exist, right? But it's funny because, again, they claim that it exists and they're sexist and they're misogynist and all sorts of terrible people. Well, supposedly these terrible people happen to be pretty popular, and especially among the majority of Democratic voters. So what I want to do is I want to do a comparison here with the numbers that we know. Again, we don't know the Sanders numbers, but we do know he's most popular, right? He's the most popular politician. So let's look at some of the other Democrats here and see how they fare against the progressive wing. First, you have Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Now, he polls at 28% favorable and 34% unfavorable. Now, Democrats view him positively by a 2-to-1 margin. That is unsurprising, okay? But overall, Chuck Schumer is fairly unpopular. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi posts a negative 31-47 split, but is viewed favorably by a large majority of Democrats. That might be problematic for Stephen Jaffe, who's running against Nancy Pelosi, challenging her in a primary. So, but then again, Jaffe really doesn't have his name out there when it comes to the race. So we'll see whether or not the Democrats in California, in Pelosi's district, will choose her or if they'll go with a progressive. We'll have to see. I'm hoping that they go with the progressive. Now, especially since he's running on the Bernie Sanders platform. Now, as for the Democratic Party overall, they have a 42% approval rating, which is actually better than it was right after the election, but still pretty dismal, as 48% of the American public still disapprove of the Democratic Party. Now, 70% of Democrats, however, say that they are happy with the direction that their party is going. So they're happy with the job the Democrats are doing. I would not be happy. I'm actually unhappy of the direction that they're moving, although I will give some credit to some of the Democrats that are starting to lean in a more progressive direction, because I think that's the way we need to go. But generally, I'm very unhappy with Nancy Pelosi and sort of unhappy with Chuck Schumer. I think we could go in a much more progressive direction. Now, the Republicans. Speaking of the parties, right? How are the Republicans doing? Not very well. The Republican Party's job approval now is at 30% positive and 70% negative. Sad. Now, look, much of that can be explained by their complete and utter failure to do anything. For example, they didn't repeal and replace Obamacare. That's something they promised. They didn't build a wall. And they have no legislative achievements despite having major majorities, okay? And they even had a chance to try and pass repeal and replace without needing the Democrats. So you can't just blame this on Democrats, right? They had a way where they only needed 50 votes. And Mike Pence could be the tiebreaker. They couldn't even get that done. So, monumental failure, right? And a lot of that failure, it gets pinned on the leadership. In fact, how is the leadership doing? Also not well. House Speaker Paul Ryan now has a negative 33 to 47 split. So that's pretty bad, but not nearly as bad as the person who does worst on the list on this list. And that is not Donald Trump. Actually, it's Mitch McConnell. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell actually now has the lowest favorability rating of any elected official with a national profile. This is a disaster. He is polling at 19% favorability. He's doing worse than Trump. Much, much worse than Trump. In fact, 49% of voters polled have a negative view of Mitch McConnell. And in Kentucky, it gets worse for him. Now, he's up for re-election in 2020. And in Kentucky, he has an 18% job approval rating. There's a chance that if the Democrats can actually run a halfway decent candidate, unlike how they did last time, that McConnell will end up being turtle soup. If the Democrats, I have very little hopes for the Democrats, but maybe there's a Justice Democrat or, somebody from brand new Congress, a progressive, that picks up the mantle and decides to run in Kentucky. We will see if that happens. If they do and they run a good campaign, there's a chance that you could replace McConnell. But it will not be an easy fight. That's for sure. Now, again, McConnell, one more thing on him. He is the only Republican elected official that is not viewed favorably by a majority of his own party. So it's not just the American people as well. A lot of people in the Republican Party are pissed at McConnell, and that does not bode well for him as well. Again, this goes back to the failure of the Republicans to actually do anything, and a lot of them will blame McConnell for that. Now, finally, on to President Trump. President Trump currently has a 41% favorability rating. That's not great. His job approval rating is also pretty bad. Now, it's not at its lowest point in the Harvard-Harris survey, with 43% of respondents approving and 57% disapproving. So I believe it is at the lowest point in the Harvard-Harris survey. Now, Trump and McConnell, according to Harvard-Harris co-director Mark Penn, seem to be locked in a death spiral. He says if the Republicans don't unify with Trump and unify amongst themselves in tax reform, they could face some major losses given these numbers. So that shows how tax reform, what they call tax reform, it's really tax cuts for the rich, how much of an important thing that is for them to actually get done. And they all want it, and it's more likely to happen than the repeal of the ACA. So we'll see how that turns out. Right now, they, of course, have some very important things to get done first, including the debt ceiling, as well as the budget. So, but after that, they're going to try to cut taxes on the rich. And we'll see how that goes. There is some chance that Trump could even bungle that. We'll see. Now, this is, of course, all while Bernie Sanders continues to keep his spot as the most well-liked politician in America. Which makes me think that maybe the Democrats should learn something from him. Maybe they should adopt his policies. Now, some of them, to give them credit, are coming around. For example, H.R. 676, that's Medicare for All, introduced by John Conyers in the House of Representatives, now has over 100 co-sponsors. That's pretty good. And even Cory Booker, somebody that I have criticized, rightly so, has recently introduced legislation to legalize marijuana on the federal level. That's good progress. I like those pieces of legislation. That's a step forward. That's what we need to do in the Democratic Party. The conversations have certainly changed in Congress. Now it's instead of debts and austerity, we're now talking about things like a living wage and expanding healthcare. Now, the establishment still doesn't like having these conversations, right? So what they're doing is that they're trying to continue to smear Bernie Sanders and his supporters. But as you can see from these polls, those attempts to smear him have been largely unsuccessful, and I don't see them as being successful anytime soon. Okay. Here we go. Moving on. Let's go with the wall. Okay. Now, the debt ceiling is a very important subject, right? Well, now, what it does is that it authorizes the United States to pay its bills. That's why everybody's freaking out about, oh, we're hitting the debt ceiling. We got to do something about it. We got to raise it, right? Now, it's important to note that this does not authorize new debt, okay? This is basically debt that we've already amassed. So, and look, we have to pay that. We have to pay our bills, right? It's pretty important to do that. Now, as I said, the debt ceiling, it's coming fast. We hit that in September. So it's real close. Now, if we don't raise the debt ceiling, we threaten the full faith and credit of the United States. Now, that would be very bad, as we would see rising interest rates, which would end up hurting the economy, would create investor panic, maybe even do a run on the banks, and would shut down even certain government services. So it would have a whole host of disastrous economic effects, not just here, but across the world, since we're the world's largest economy. So it's pretty important that we don't play games with the debt ceiling, that we raise the debt ceiling, right? Now, House Speaker Paul Ryan, well, he actually agrees with that. Now, let's go to an interview here that he held at a Boeing plant recently when he talked about the debt ceiling.
I'm really not that worried about this. We have plenty of options ahead of us. We will pay our debts, and we will make the debt limit. We will hit the increase before this is penetrated, meaning we will pass a debt limit increase before we hit the debt limit. Plenty of options in front of us.
Do those options include a clean hike of the debt ceiling?
There's a bunch of different options in front of us. I'm not going to kind of negotiate to the media, but we have a lot of options in front of us. I'm really not worried about getting this done because I know we will get this done, and we will pass the increase before we hit the debt limit.
Okay. So now we go to Mitch McConnell, right? Now, Mitch McConnell is the Senate Majority Leader. So he's also on the debt limit. He's saying, yes, let's raise it. Let's pay our bills and pass a clean bill to do just that. So again, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, they're in agreement, right? They want to avoid economic disaster. Now, we can go into the hypocrisy of them previously, especially Mitch McConnell, holding the debt ceiling hostage in order to get certain concessions for the Republican Party. And that's a definite fair criticism. But on this, they're not playing around. They're like, yeah, of course we got to raise the debt limit. Are you crazy? Well, speaking of crazy, now we go to Donald Trump. At his Tuesday rally, he said this about the debt ceiling.
Now, the obstructionist Democrats would like us not to do it, but believe me, if we have to close down our government, we're building that wall. Let me be very clear to Democrats in Congress who oppose a border wall and stand in the way of border security. You are putting all of America's safety at risk. You're doing that. You're doing that.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, you're putting all Americans at risk by not building the border wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the entire economy at risk so that I can build this wall. You fucking moron. Look, what's funny is that, wait, I thought Mexico was going to pay for this wall. Didn't you make all these promises that Mexico was going to pay for the wall? In fact, we could go back and I could find, look, you don't even have to do an intensive search. You just look up Trump, Mexico wall. And you're going to find speech on top of speech where it's like, who's going to pay for the wall? Mexico's going to pay for the wall. Mexico's not paying for the wall. If they were, why is Trump threatening to shut down the government for not funding the border wall? So, but look, they never intended for Mexico to pay for the wall, and they knew that. But nonetheless, here you have Kellyanne Conway, right, who is basically avoiding that question, who's basically wants you to forget that they even promised to have Mexico pay for the wall, since she's doubling down on let's shut down the government if Congress doesn't fund the wall. Let's take a look at that video.
He's going to shut down the government if the wall is not funded by our Congress, our leaders in Washington. And then you had Paul Ryan saying, I don't think that was smart. I don't want to shut down the government. And of course, you have the Democrats that are saying that's not wise either. Is he going to stick to this?
He's going to stick to building that wall, Ainsley, and he wants the money to pay for it. The president ran on building the wall, won on building the wall, and has remained steadfastly committed to doing it. And anybody who is surprised by that has not been paying attention for over 2 years. He's telling Congress he's building the wall, he expects the funding, and it's up to them. It's up to them to work collaboratively. We hope they do.
Oh, for Christ's sakes. What happened to Mexico, Kellyanne? What happened? What happened? Look, they knew, again, Mexico was not going to pay for the wall. Now they want us to pay for the wall. And they're threatening the full faith and credit of the United States in order to do that. This is not only stupid, but it's dangerous, right? Trump is essentially putting the entire financial future of the world in jeopardy to build a wall that, again, is not going to work. It's not going to stop drugs. It's not going to stop illegal immigration. And not only that, but this is not something that he actually really, or at least he admits is not a huge policy priority. In fact, during a January 27 conversation with Mexican President Nieto, Trump characterized the wall as, quote, the least important thing that we are talking about. But politically, this might be the most important thing we talk about. So, like, trying to understand that, right? Yeah, I don't really think that it's that important as far as policy goes. But politically, I made this promise, so I kind of have to do it now. Look, I think that Trump is too stupid to know what he's doing, okay? That he doesn't understand the consequences of not paying our bills. This is not the same as the debt ceiling fights before, where it was between Republicans and Democrats to try to extract some concessions, but ultimately we're going to do it. No, this is Trump fighting with his own party. Okay, this is not some dance to try to come to an agreement. This is him fighting with Republicans saying, no, you guys are in charge and you're gonna fund my wall. He's too stupid to know that what he's doing is dangerous. Okay, this is a disaster. And look, Trump has a history of not paying his bills. Okay, so he thinks the United States can get away with not paying their own bills if it happens, right? I mean, he's faced numerous lawsuits for not paying employees or people who do him services, who do work on his hotels. He also calls himself the king of debt, and even advocated for not paying the debts, for not raising the debt ceiling, so that we could negotiate better payments on our national debt. This guy's a lunatic, and a dangerous one that has no understanding of how the economy actually works. If he continues to play games with the debt ceiling in order to build a stupid fucking wall, then we are in for a very, very rough time. All right, more. A couple more Trump related stories, and we'll get to some other stuff. Let's see. Actually, no, let's go to this one and then go to the next one. Actually, no, that was the right one. Okay. Now, in the wake of Charlottesville, where Donald Trump called those marching with the neo-Nazis, the KKK, and white supremacist groups very, very fine people, and has blamed both sides for the violence that killed Heather Heyer, the administration has been losing members of its different advisory groups. Now, 3 of which, the entire groups are gone. They've completely disbanded, while others have lost lots of individual members. Now, in total, the resignations are up to at least 69 people. So that's very significant. Now, what I want to do is I want to go through the list of how many people have left in the big groups and how many people have resigned, have left those advisory groups. So we'll start out with the National Infrastructure Advisory Board. Now, this is a group which provides advice on critical infrastructure to the Department of Homeland Security. Now, this was founded under George W. Bush. They have lost at least 2 people so far. The Digital Economy Board of Advisor, which gives advice on the digital economy to Commerce Department, founded under President Obama, has lost 3 people so far. The President's Strategic and Policy Forum, which is a business advisory group founded under Trump. So he created this, and he brought all these businessmen on board, these CEOs, which were 16 in total, right? Brought them on, and after Charlottesville, all of them walked. It started with a couple of them, and then, as I said, after Charlottesville, the rest of them were gone. And then Trump later on said, they didn't quit. I disbanded it. Classy, right? Classic Trump. Now, alongside that, you also have the Manufacturing Jobs Initiative, which is an initiative to support manufacturing jobs founded under Trump. That is, again, also gone, completely disbanded. Okay. Now, we also have other advisory boards that have lost several members. For example, the President's Evangelical Advisory Board. Now, that's interesting. That's an unofficial presidential council based on, quote, on Christian issues, which I think is rather strange to have in government, but nonetheless, they say it's unofficial, so whatever, right? Now, that already has actually had one resignation as well. But wait, only one? President Trump, look, if he's a Christian, he's actually really, really bad at being a Christian, okay? But again, when you ask evangelicals who carried him to victory, voted them for him in such large amounts, such large numbers, well, when you ask them, they don't really care, okay? They're still behind him. Over 80% of evangelicals, white evangelicals, voted for Donald Trump. All right. Now, you also have the President's Global Development Council, which is an advisory group on U.S. foreign assistance founded under President Obama. That has had 6 resignations. And then you also have President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. That's a group that works with the White House to partner with the AAPI community. That was founded under President Clinton. That lost 16 people. Now, that group, that advisory council, said most of them, when they left, got together, had a joint letter, and they said that we object to your portrayal of immigrants, refugees, people of color, and people of various faiths as untrustworthy, threatening, and a drain in our nation. So that's pretty strong. Now that commission just has 4 members left. So, and there are other commissions, and there are even more resignations from people on these commissions. So this is a disaster, okay? All these different commissions with all these different people, especially the business commissions, it shows how the business community and all these different groups are running away with their hair on fire. And look, it's not just them. It's Republicans that are starting to turn on him. There are other reports where he's losing support from inside the party because he keeps attacking people inside the party. He's fighting with Mitch McConnell. He's fighting with Paul Ryan. He's fighting with a lot of these other Republicans, moderate Republicans, Shelley Moore Capito, for example, or Capito, however you say her name. Look, everybody is leaving. He's losing his circle. He's also losing members of his inner circle, and the White House is still in chaos. He's alienating everyone except for his core supporters. And who knows when that's going to happen, if that's even possible. We don't know yet. We'll see. But with Trump, the thing you have to understand is that with Trump, there is no rock bottom. Because he always seems to find a way to go a little bit lower than the bottom. So we'll have to see who else he can chase away from the administration. But so far, seems to be a lot of people. Very, very big turnaround. All right. Let's take one quick break here. We'll be back. We got a lot more stories, so stick around right here, TYT Nation. All right, back and around the nation here. Tytnation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. More stories to go. Let's get right back into it. We'll start out with Trump's news fluffer. We got more news on that guy. All right. Now, we have another resignation from the Trump team that happened this week. Now, Politico reported on Thursday that Andy Hemming had resigned from his position as the White House Communications Director, Team Director of Rapid Response on Monday. Now, look, that name, not familiar to a lot of people because apparently this guy worked in the shadows. So his name really wasn't out there, but it turns out he performed a very important role inside the White House. He was Donald Trump's news fluffer. So what does that position entail? Well, earlier this month, Politico profiled Hemming and found out that he was responsible for finding positive mainstream news stories about the Trump administration and recirculating those reports to key reporters and talking heads. Now, look, I talked about earlier, a couple of weeks ago, after Politico did that report, how Sean Spicer and Reince Priebus would fight over who gets to deliver this report. So Andy Hemming, he was the guy that gathered everything up and then sent it out to all the different people in the administration. They'd go and pick through all this stuff, and they would bring the most positive stuff out to President Trump. And they would fight over the privilege of who got to bring it to them. Sad. Very, very sad. Now, so what's interesting is Hemming, he actually got paid $89,000 a year just to find out positive articles and send them to the to all these different members of the administration. Now, look, one important thing to note about this job is that, look, this isn't unique to every to this administration. In fact, every administration does this to a certain extent. They will highlight the good news and release it about the administration. Okay, that's fairly standard. However, Hemming took a little bit further. Okay, and what's also interesting is Trump's relationship with the press and how it's a little bit different. Now, considering, how, of course, how Trump calls every station that happens to run a negative news story about him fake news. Okay, now, I talked about some of the work that he had done, right? And how it got released to Reince Priebus. Now, this goes back to a Vice report reported earlier this month. Now, they said that the result of Hemming's work was a folder filled with positive news that is delivered to Trump twice a day. Quote, the folders are filled with screenshots of positive cable news chyrons, admiring tweets, transcripts of fawning TV interviews, praise-filled news stories, and sometimes just pictures of Trump on TV looking powerful. So some of that, of course, is like, oh, we can't find a positive news story about Donald Trump. I know. Let's send a picture of him looking powerful. That was part of his job. Again, super sad. Now, interestingly enough, one White House official said the only feedback the White House communications shop, which prepares the folder, has ever gotten in all those months, it says, quote, it needs to be more fucking positive. Because, again, you don't want to hurt the baby's feelings. You want to make sure the baby feels powerful. The baby being Trump. And that's why some in the White House referred to this as a propaganda document. So, again, if you're talking about blasting out positive news coverage, okay, all administrations do that to an extent, as I said. But they don't do the propaganda document. And that's what they literally call it inside the White House. This is not something that left-wingers, people who are against Trump, made up. That's what they call it, okay? Now, if somebody actually, speaking of other administrations, somebody brought that to President Obama, twice a day, not once, but twice, they would literally laugh you out of the room, okay? But since our president's a child, he's a baby, sad, he loves it, he's got to get his propaganda document. Oh, look at this wonderful article from Breitbart. Oh, look at that picture. Don't I look so presidential? I look presidential. Yes, you do, little Donnie. Sure you do. What a sad, sad excuse for a human being. Now, Hemming has been approached by the press, and he has not publicly commented on his exit. However, a White House source told CNN that the decision to part ways was mutual, but you know CNN, fake news, so you never know. So, my opinion on this, look, I think that job is probably one of the worst jobs in the White House. You're President Trump's news fluffer, okay? You're getting all these. You gotta sit there and watch cable news, right? And if you actually like somebody like Trump, you're watching hours upon hours of negative coverage, and then you got to go and watch the knuckleheads over at Fox and Friends in the morning, where you'll only find positive news. So maybe that's where he's spending most of his time. Terrible job, terrible. And maybe they'll find a few good articles from Breitbart, but considering how Bannon is a little angry at the administration, maybe not Trump himself, but the rest of the administration, it might be a little rough to find a positive article there. But nonetheless, that's what happened. His news fluffer is gone. Now, do I think they're going to replace him? Of course he does. Someone's got to feed Trump's ego, lest the baby get upset. It just shows what a sad, sad state we live in with Donald Trump at the helm. God help us all. All right. Let's move on to some non-Trump related news. Let's go to Dapple. It's been a while since we did a Dapple story. Okay. Now, the corporation behind the Dakota Access Pipeline is now suing environmentalists for what they refer to as eco-terrorism. Terrorism. Now, Bloomberg reports that Energy Transfer Partners, LP, the company, as I said, behind the Dakota Access Pipeline, is accusing a slew of different environmental groups, including Greenpeace, International, Earth First, and other groups, of inciting terrorist acts and vandalism. Again, we're talking about terrorism. Terrorism. We're using that word. This is already outrageous. Okay. Now, not only that, but Energy Transfer Partners in their suit claims that these groups have engaged in racketeering. Racketeering. They said that Greenpeace led a corrupt environmentalist enterprise that cynically planted radical, violent eco-terrorists on the ground amongst their protesters, and directly funded their operations and publicly urged their supporters to do the same. Now, look, I wasn't at Dapple, okay? But I heard quite a few things about people infiltrating the group. But it wasn't environmentalists that were infiltrating the camps. These were people that were alleged to be from Dakota Access, from Energy Transfer Partners, that were hired by that company to go and disrupt the water protectors, to actually start problems, to actually make the water protectors look bad. Okay? And look, that happens in protests. They're agitators, right? They work for the companies. They go and try to destroy the protests and make sure that they get bad news coverage, bad media coverage, which in this case, what little media coverage Dapple got, the water protectors got, was negative. So they seem to have done their jobs pretty well. Now, the company also claims that negative publicity generated by the demonstrations caused Energy Transfer to lose many hundreds of millions of dollars and damage its ability to raise money from capital markets. Oh, Energy Transfer Partners, did you lose money? Oh, sad. That's a sad day for you. You know what the Standing Rock Sioux have lost? Or they face losing? Their fucking water supply. So, not to mention their sacred land, in which some of their ancestors might have actually been buried in, and you come in and you desecrate it to put in a pipeline. So forgive me if I'm not sad about you losing some profits. All right. Now, on the money issue, Energy Transfer Partners, they are seeking unspecified money damages, which would be tripled under U.S. racketeering laws. a court order barring the groups from further protests, and an order for the groups to return money to their donors. They claim that under the Greenpeace model, raising money and the network's profile is the primary objective, not saving the environment. This is ironic, right? Oh, you're going to talk about saving the environment, right? What your primary objective is. It certainly isn't your primary objective if you're an oil company building a pipeline under a river that could very well leak. Doesn't seem like that's a priority to you when it comes to saving the environment. Now, they continue to claim that issues are selected according to which ones will generate maximum publicity and donations, irrespective of the environmental merits. Again, that's funny because I've talked about DAPL, and I've talked about the lack of corporate media coverage on DAPL. They essentially ignored it. MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, for the most part, they ignored DAPL. Okay. Now, you did have people like Amy Goodman from Democracy Now!, Jordan Sheridan for TYT Politics, and Lawrence O'Donnell, I got to give him credit too, from MSNBC, who were also there. And I'm sorry if I missed any others that were also there. But a lot of these were independent media outlets and not a lot of huge ones. Okay. As I said, MSNBC, the only one who from MSNBC who went out there that I know of was Lawrence O'Donnell. Okay. So now, of course, all of those charges against the water protectors, I believe, are quite ridiculous. But here's the worst. And I mentioned this before. They said in their complaint, the criminal enterprise, that's what they called it, through Earth First and Red Warrior Camp, funded and incited acts of terrorism in violation of the U.S. Patriot Act. That included attempts and actual destruction of an energy facility and arson on government property, they claim. Those acts included the burning of construction equipment and the use of blowtorches to cut holes in parts of the pipeline. And they said that had oil been flowing when the sabotage occurred, the pipeline might have exploded, endangering human lives and resulting in an environmental disaster. Like they care about an environmental disaster. That entire pipeline is an environmental disaster waiting to happen. Now, I'm not saying that I would condone any such acts, right? What I'm saying is that I think they're bullshitting. I think they're lying about this. And look, there's a lot of information out there about these protests that are misleading, right? I wouldn't be very surprised to learn that it was actually agents from Energy Transfer Partners doing these alleged arson and vandalism acts, right? I would be very, very surprised if it were members of the actual camps that were doing these, okay? Because look, for one simple reason, they're protecting their land. Burning it down doesn't make a whole lot of sense. All right. But again, we saw exaggerated charges. We saw police brutality, rubber bullets, pepper spray, hoses being turned on full blast in freezing weather. On and on. They even arrested a woman with a prayer stick, claiming that it was a .38 revolver. It was a prayer stick. There's no way you can confuse the two. But they did. So, look, you had the lies and you had the dirty tricks that were employed by the police. You also had Energy Transfer Partners doing the same thing. Look, it's enough to make you incredibly dubious about a lot of the claims in this lawsuit. You know what I think it is? It's trying to shut people up. It's trying to intimidate those who would stand up against the powerful. And if they think that's going to work, you think that's going to shut us up, no, they got another thing coming. Okay. More environmental news. Okay. Now, Montana is in the middle of dealing with a disaster, a wildfire. These fires, of course, are spreading across the state and have burned thousands of acres of forest. They've also destroyed 2 homes, threatened businesses, and even claimed the life of one firefighter who was unfortunately crushed by a tree. And these fires show no signs of stopping. Now, Ryan Zinke, who's related to the story, he is the Interior Secretary for the Trump administration. Now, he's also a native of Montana. In fact, they had a recent election in Montana to replace Zinke, which pit Greg Gianforte versus progressive candidate Rob Quist. I covered that story quite a few times. Now, Gianforte is famously or infamously known as the guy who body slammed BuzzFeed reporter Ben Jacobs. So, oh boy. Well known for that. Now, Zinke traveled home to Montana with Agricultural Secretary Sonny Perdue for a briefing on these deadly wildfires that are ripping through the state. Now, during that briefing, they decided to blame the wildfires not on drought conditions caused by climate change, but on something else. For that, I go to the Huffington Post. They blamed it on mismanagement resulting from lawsuits by what they called environmental extremists. At this briefing at the Lolo Peak Incident Command in Missoula, Zinke and the others spoke of the importance of getting ahead of wildfires by better managing the forests, as well as the threat they say certain environmentalists pose to that effort. Interesting. Now, Senator Steve Daines, who was also there, he implied that the town's timber mills have been replaced by lawyers working for what they called extreme environmental groups fighting to stall and stop efforts to clear dead and dying timber. See? Hey, it's all the liberals' fault. Those liberals or their damn lawyers, they're stopping us from preventing wildfires. It's all their fault. See, nothing to do with climate change. Hey, guys, look away, look away, look away. It's not real, it's fake Chinese hoax. Look over there, lawyers. Really? Look, scientists using science have shown that climate change has been driving up temperatures on land. And what that does is that it ends up triggering longer wildfire seasons in western states where it's already very warm. Now, wildfires, they do happen. They have happened for centuries, right? And one of the ways to fight it is by clearing out dead trees and thinning out forests. It's very effective at stopping the spread of wildfires. However, climate change, what it does is that it helps to create those conditions through longer drought periods, right? That makes it easier for fires to start and makes them harder to contain. So, in effect, that lengthens wildfire season. So, that's not a good thing, okay? In fact, last year, researchers from Columbia University and the University of Idaho found that climate change has been fueling longer wildfires in the western United States for decades. And while you cannot blame climate change for any individual fire or any individual weather event, you can basically look at it as something that causes those conditions. So you have drier conditions for longer, there's just more chance of something random starting a fire. For example, a lightning strike. Okay. And yet, even looking at all the data, these people, they don't want to see it. Okay. They would rather blame the liberals than actually accept the science that's peer reviewed. In fact, here you have Daines saying, quote, "The climate has always been changing. We go through warmer cycles, cooler cycles, droughts, excessive precipitation. We're in a warm cycle right now. We're in drought conditions here in Montana, and consequently, we're having a severe fire season." Again, that's the entire argument they use. Oh, but it happened before. Yeah, of course it happens before. Yes, there's a little bit of truth to that. The thing about climate change is that it makes it worse. It takes conditions that already exist and exacerbates them. See, that's the thing, right? Climate change, what it does is that it does not create drought conditions. It prolongs them. It doesn't create severe storms. It makes them, storms that already would have existed, makes them more severe. That warming has an impact. And if you don't understand that, you don't have an elementary understanding of actual science. Look, climate denial is faith. That's nothing more than faith and denial, okay? No. I have faith that we cannot change the environment through our actions. Really? Okay, man. Despite the evidence that shows that you are wrong. Now, anyway, what makes this worse, right, is not the fact that climate change is fueling these fires, right? Is helping to create the conditions of these wildfires. Is that what we're doing about it, right? Now, President Trump, his proposed 2018 budget has called for massive cuts in efforts to fight fires. Okay. The budget calls for $300 million reduction to the U.S. Forest Service wildfire fighting program, and another $50 million to cuts in wildfire prevention efforts, and a 23% reduction in funding for volunteer fire departments. So here you have a perfect storm. You do have climate change, and it is getting worse. You also have a reduction in money for firefighting, which is going to impact the western states that are already seeing wildfires even more. Why not just have planes drop gas and matches in the forest? No, don't actually do that. That's a bad idea. Knowing Trump, he might be dumb enough to actually try that. Can't burn down the forest if there's no forest. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Terrible, terrible idea. But look, that's sort of what we're doing in essence by ignoring the issue, okay? And instead casting blame on the very people who are actually trying to protect the environment against this. Okay. Anyway. One more story. I still had to make fun of this guy, of course. Now, Christopher Cantwell, the white nationalist who was featured in a Vice documentary, has now been arrested and is being held without bond. Now, there were rumors before that are now confirmed about him having a warrant on him. Now, that caused him to release a famous teary video in which he became known as the crying Nazi. In fact, let me show you some of that.
I contacted the local police. I called the Charlottesville Police Department, and I asked them, I said, I have been told that there's a warrant out for my arrest. And they said that they wouldn't confirm it, but that I could find this out if I, excuse me, that I could find this out if I wanted to go to a local magistrate or something like that. But with everything that's happening, I don't think it's wise for me to be, going anywhere. There's a state of emergency. The National Guard is here. So I don't think it's a good idea for me to go there, frankly. And I don't know what to do. I've emailed Stephen Tenney of the Keene Police Department. Sorry. I have emailed Stephen Tenney of the Keene Police Department. He's one of the cops who came there. He's one of the cops who saved my ass when I had to pull my gun in Keene. And I emailed him and I said, I don't know what to do. I need guidance. I want to be peaceful. I want to be law-abiding. Okay, that was the whole entire point of this. And I'm watching CNN talk about this as violent white nationalist protests. We have done everything in our power to keep this peaceful. I know we talk a lot of shit on the internet, right? But literally, Jason Kessler applied for a permit months ago for this. Okay, when they yanked our permit, we went to the ACLU and we went to court and we won. We've been coordinating with law enforcement the entire time. Every step of the way, we've tried to do the right thing. And they just won't stop, We have done everything in our power. We have used every peaceful and lawful means by which to redress our grievances. And our enemies just will not stop. If I can confirm that you are in fact law enforcement, I will give you my location and I will let you come and get me, okay? I'm armed. I do not want violence with you. All right? I'm terrified. I'm afraid you're going to kill me. I really am. All right? So,
Nazi tears are delicious. I just have to say that. But look, hey, he did get picked up. He turned himself in, actually. The rumors of the warrant happen to be, as I said, true. And the Albemarle County Commonwealth's Attorney Office had actually issued 4 different warrants for Cantwell's arrest. Later on, that led, of course, Cantwell to turn himself into Virginia's Lynchburg Police Department. And now he is in jail. He is in custody, and he is being charged, according to the New York Times, with 3 different felonies. One is one felony count of malicious bodily injury by means of a caustic substance, and 2 felony counts of illegal use of tear gas. So here's what's funny about this, right? So this guy, he's a tough guy, right? He's a white supremacist. He hates Jews. He hates black people. He hates liberals, okay? Anybody who is saying, well, he's a socialist, you're an idiot. You obviously don't know the difference between a National Socialist and a Democratic Socialist. Oh, but they have the same name. No, you're too dumb to understand the difference. Go and learn something and then come back, okay? Again, ridiculous, right? Now, this is the person that also said, I have no problem with being more violent. In fact, I'm trying to be more violent, okay? And so on and so on. And yet, of course, when we talk about what happened in Charlottesville, it's both sides. At least when you talk to the President of the United States as well as other Republicans, right? Now, look, it's fairly clear, and we've shown that already. One side showed up there to espouse hate. The other side showed up to counter that hate, to be the opposite. They are not the same. And sure, there was fistfights between protesters and counter-protesters, but this guy is accused of using chemical weapons. Again, felony, right? Tear gas is literally considered a chemical weapon. Okay? So, look, but yet, the left, we are the violent ones, right? We're not the ones who showed up with clubs and shields, ridiculous looking shields, and even weapons, okay? And then we're also not the ones who had a guy with us who decided it would be fun to run into a crowd of counter-protesters, injuring 19 and killing 1, Heather Heyer. But yet, we are the violent ones. And look, this despicable person, right, he also had the gall to say that she had it coming. Well, this is almost karma at this point. Because you know what they say. What comes around, what goes around, comes around. And I think he's getting his payback. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Make sure to like and share the stream if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, please go and subscribe to our channel. You want to support the show, you can support us at patreon.com/tytnation. That's when you get the full show. You can watch it whenever you want. We'll have a link up to it on our Patreon page. Put it up every day. Let's see. What else? I don't think I really have anything else. I believe that we're going to try and have an interview with somebody running in Michigan here as a progressive on Monday. Hopefully I can set that up. And I'm hoping Ron can return next week as well. So we'll see if that happens on Wednesday. So other than that, we got a fun next week planned. So make sure to join us. Same time, same place, 3 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. And remember, love you guys. And change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. Have an awesome weekend. We'll see you Monday.